Hi there, Lindsay here, the Frugal Crafter. Today we are going to paint these bottles using Graphitint pencils, and if you'd like a real-time 2-hour-long version of this tutorial, you can find it up in Critique Club. I'll have a link in the video description. And this was inspired by a box of old bottles found in the Maine woods that I bought at an antique mall this weekend, and I paid $7 for the box of bottles. And I thought, what the heck, I'll take a gamble. I thought they would be interesting, if nothing else, and then I thought, you know what, I'm going to draw these because how fun, how timely, and you always feel good when you use something right after you buy it, right? I'm using the Derwent Graphitint pencils, but any water-soluble pencils are going to be fine for this. And I was holding up my pencil there to kind of scope out and measure out and get my angles, and I'll talk about that in the real-time lesson if you want to go grab that in Critique Club. Critique Club is $7.50 per month, and it gives you access to over 150 different real-time tutorials, monthly prompts, and you get feedback from me on your artwork. I did want to let you know I will be on vacation the 17th through the 24th of this month, May 2025. So if you do leave a comment during that week, you just have to wait until the 25th for me to respond. But other than that, I'm usually pretty quick within 24 hours for a response. But I'm going on vacation, so I just want to give you the heads up there. And also, if you love painting glass, I have a whole class on painting glass. It's called the Watercolor Glass Class. I know, super original, right? And I will put a discount on that too for anybody that wants to grab that because it's such a fun summer class. I actually filmed it in the summer a couple of years ago, and I don't know, I think light, sparkly bottles, but throw a couple of wildflowers in them, so fun to paint. So there'll be a discount on that, and there'll be a link to that in the video description as well. So what I'm doing here is basically, so to set up my still life, I put my bottles in front of, or actually I have a piece of white paper that I have leaned up against the wall. I set up my bottles, I took a photo of it, and then I actually brought the bottles over to my desk. So if I needed to get a closer look on anything, I could pick it up and examine it. But I wanted to make sure I was working from the same reference as my students. So that's why I took the photo and mainly working off the photo. But anytime you can set up your own still life, I think it's great because then you can actually pick up and inspect the objects that you're working on. And I'm just noticing there, I had that neck a little too low on that bottle that's on the side, but you know what? We correct stuff. And one thing I realized, if my paper was a little bit taller, what I could have done was I could have just traced the bottles because they're all fairly small bottles. I think the tallest one's probably like 6 inches tall. So that's an option too if you have something like this. But the thing to remember is that bottles are just rectangles. Even cylindrical bottles, they're really just rectangles with curved bottoms and tops. So keep that in mind when you're being overwhelmed by something. Just think of the basic shapes. Fruit, just circles. People, a combination of circles and ovals, and bottles, they're just rectangles. Just look at the basic shape, break it down, simplify it as much as possible, get the bones drawn, and then go in and add details. Don't start adding details until you're sure you got the shape right. As you can see, the bottles that I'm painting have very, very light tints to them, so I thought the Graphitints would be perfect. So I am switching colors depending on what I'm sketching. So if a bottle has a little bit of pink in it, then I'm using one of the pink ones. If the bottle has a little yellow in it, then I'm using like one of the ambery colored Graphitints. If it's got blue, I'm using one of the blue bottles. I'm just basically trying to get a little bit of color into those bottles, kind of magnify what's already there. Another thing that I want to point out is on the photo. Now I did scooch down and try to photograph these bottles as straight on as I could, but with cameras, even with cell phones, you're going to get a little parallax. You can see how some of the bottles tip a little bit towards the edge. So I used a T-square to straighten them up. So you can fix things there. Sometimes there's errors in photographs, and especially if you have a bunch of things that are standing up. And I'm not talking like stuff like skyscrapers and buildings where you would have that perspective and you'd want it to show depth. Something shallow like this, like a still life, if you see that like things on the edge have been distorted by your lens, you can fix that, right? You can fix that. So yeah, so that's, if you were going to trace it, you might even want to correct it when you go to draw it. But I like drawing. I know that, I'd probably have a more realistic look if I just trace the photo, but it's fun to draw. It's fun to, I don't know, it's just fun. I enjoy it. Maybe you don't. If you don't, then don't. But I really enjoy it. Something else I enjoy is doing a bunch of sketching and painting, and then at the end adding some fine lining. And then that way, if you have any lines that are a little bit off, you can kind of push them back and forth. You can get them into shape a little bit. And I always find that fun because it's almost like the drawing process continues throughout the entire range of the painting. And because I like drawing, I enjoy that, like a little bit of little bit of challenge throughout the piece, and it's probably why I don't like coloring that much. I mean, I like to color an image like on a greeting card because that's just small and fairly quick, and you can play with the shading and whatnot, and it's, you know, use somebody else's artwork, so that's kind of fun just to put yourself in the shoes of another artist. But coloring pages and stuff I find very tedious. Paint by numbers I find very tedious because I don't want to just fill in somebody else's drawing. I want to I want that little bit of, ooh, won't it? Will it turn out? Will it be a hot mess? You know, I don't know. I like that kind of a surprise as you go through. Oh, something else I want to point out. When you're looking at some of these jars, the ones that are a little bit shorter, they're actually just below eye level. So you will see a little bit of the ellipse at the top of at the opening of the bottle. The taller bottles are pretty much at eye level, so it's just looking straight across. If we had some bottles that were taller, then they would be curved, but they would be curved away from us because of, have to look up to see the ellipse at the top. So just keep that in mind too when you're sketching. That's a problem I see sometimes, and I've done it too, honestly. There I'm pushing out the bottom of that bottle a little bit to make the neck look like it's in the right place. That's something I see, and I've done it. We've all done it, I'm sure, where there's a bunch of vases or bottles, and then you see that the ellipses don't match. They don't work. You know, you've got, when things at eye level, the lips will be very skinny or flattened. Things that are lower are going to be much more open. Things are higher will also be more rounded, but rounded away from us. It's just one of those things that, you want to keep in mind when you're drawing. And I think that it's a good idea to spend as much time when you're drawing looking at your reference image as you do looking at your paper. Because if you stop looking at the reference image, your brain will tell you what it thinks is there or what should be there, but your eyes will tell you what's really there. And yes, we mentioned camera distortion and stuff, but looking back at your reference photo as much as possible, I think helps you get a little bit more of accurate drawing. I know when I don't look at my reference photo, if I find that I haven't looked up for a while, a neck gets too short. Like that first bottle on the left there, the neck is a little too short because I didn't look at my reference photo the whole time. But I figured that's fine. It will add a little bit of variety because it's got a little stockier neck there, and it will. And I also did that on the other end too. So, yeah, that's a tip. Look at your reference photo more. Now with the Graphitint pencils, you can do a bit of glazing. Here I'm going in and adding some darker shadows. The thing with the Graphitint, I will say, is that actually watercolor pencils in general, I find generally lift up more easily than watercolors. So that means when you're glazing a layer on top, you have to be careful not to pick up what's underneath and just end up lifting everything out. The exception to that would be, of course, like the Derwent Inktense pencils, which allow you to layer and layer and layer and build up those colors. This would be really pretty in Inktense. You could definitely do these sparkly jewel tone bottles with those, but I was looking more for like a rustic look because these bottles are not pristine. A lot of them are kind of hazy in spots because they were dug out of the ground. You'll find a lot of, if you dig in the dirt around here, you'll find a lot of old glass bottles. I guess people must have just buried them in the backyard rather than, you know, thrown them away or recycled them. Because, you know, these, the box that I bought, it said glass bottles found in an old Maine woods from 1890 to 1930. So that's the dates on these bottles. And I think that blue one's a Vicks vapor rub bottle because they still look like that, but they're plastic now. So it's kind of neat. That yellowish bottle, the fourth one in, kind of has a texture to it, almost like a leathery texture to it, which is kind of cool. And I don't know, I like the weatheredness. I like how they are really old because, you know, you can buy bottles at the dollar store or at TJ Maxx or whatever. And, you know, they're just glass bottles that have been painted a lot of times with like a film, a clear film, colored film. And they're cute and stuff, but they're just not quite as authentic. They're prettier, honestly, but they're not quite as authentic. And this was fun. Now, to get some of the texture on that bottle, I just colored with the edge of my pencil and just let it grab the texture of the paper. And that worked out really well. So with the graphite, I think in these Graphitint pencils, it makes the pencil even more liftable. So if you need to scrub back, you can scrub out the graphite, but the color in there does tend to stain a bit. I'm not sure about the light fastness of these pencils, to be honest. Derwent does have some good charts on their website. If you are curious about the light fastness of any of their pencils, there's only 24 colors in this range, and I am using the set of 24, and I do use probably, probably more than half of those colors. So, you know, if you're going to buy them, I would recommend getting the full set just because then you have those options. They're a little light on, none of the colors are super vibrant, That's one thing to keep in mind, but they're also kind of light on the yellow. There's a meadow, which is like a yellowy green, and then there's, I think it's russet maybe, that's kind of, or an ochre. There's an ochre color in there, but there's no like real bright yellow. So that's something to kind of keep in mind. There's a couple browns, a couple grays, a couple blues, but all the colors are going to be a bit muted. Now, if you don't have any desire for this product, but you kind of would like to try out the look of it, I would recommend just getting a water-soluble graphite pencil. Derwent makes the Graphitone, I think that, yeah, Graphitone. It's a graphite, water-soluble graphite pencil, and it's a full stick, so it will last you probably a lifetime, especially if you're not using it all the time. Lyra also makes some really nice watercolor crayon, they're graphite crayons that are water soluble, and then you can also get from probably many different brands. I know Derwent has their XL blocks, Artgraph, Lyra. You can get blocks of water soluble graphite that you could just stick in your watercolor palette and just mix it with your watercolors if you want that look. So, you know, it just depends on what you like to do. You definitely don't need to have all the things. I know, is that the pot calling the kettle black or what? It's fun to have all the things. But honestly, you can get a very similar look with other products, and a different look isn't necessarily a bad look. If you're like, hey, I've got these watercolor pencils, I've had them for 10 years, I rarely use them. Do I have to get these? No, go use the ones you have. They're gonna give you a little bit different of a look, but it's gonna be a pretty look nonetheless. Not better, not worse, just different. Now, what I was doing there is I was just picking up, using my wet brush to pick up color from the tip of the pencil and use it kind of like a paint pan. Now, you can get this product, the lead from these pencils, in a set of watercolor pans. They're called the Graphitint. I think it's just called Graphitint paint pan set by Derwent, but there's only 12 colors, so you are a little more limited. So I'd say if you have to choose, I would go with the pencil set. The pencil set's a little more expensive generally, but you get more colors, and in such a limited palette, such a limited range anyway, I think you will probably want them. And honestly, if you're looking at the leads, I bet you're getting about the same amount of product in a half pan versus a pencil. And you can buy the half pans open stock at Blick anyway. So if you do want to try a half pan and see what you think, and try a pencil and see what you find is the most useful, you could definitely do that. Or just add a half pan of the graphite one to your regular watercolor set, and then have that option as well. For the lettering on some of these bottles, since it's very vague, I'm just kind of doing almost like a faux lettering, where I'm just kind of making marks as I see them and trying not to spell stuff out. One of these bottles says Boston on the side of them. There's one that's from like Portland, Maine. I just love it. I love that sort of thing. I love vintage stuff. I don't know. And I tend to like old medicine bottles. I think the last thing I bought at an antique mall was like 3 tall medicine bottles, and I don't even know if they were actual antiques, because sometimes in these antique malls you see stuff that is probably come from TJ Maxx, honestly. So you do have to be really careful, I find, nowadays, shopping in the antique mall, and making sure if you are paying like real antique prices, you're getting a real antique thing. Because I mean, you see stuff on Amazon, and I see things advertised for Temu that are like spool chests and stuff like that for thread spools, and it's like, I think I saw something like that at the antiques market. It probably came from there and just marked up. But you just have to know your stuff, or you have to not care. Now, here I am just going in with a fine liner, and I decided that I would use my brown fine liners because it would give me a little bit more of a vintage look. I thought black might be a little bit too stark, but if you're using regular watercolor pencils or ink tints, you might want that black for a crisper look. These brown fine liners, I highly recommend them. They're by Bienyo, and you get a set of 12, and I think it's around $15 or $16 now, but every once in a while they go on sale. I think I paid around 11 or 12 I bought 2 sets. And they're wonderful. They are holding up really well. I haven't gotten into my second set that I bought. I bought it on sale, so I'd have a backup, but I started these like, I'm going to say over a year ago, and I use them quite frequently, and they're still going strong. I haven't had any dry out, and I like this set because it has the regular fine liners, but it also has 2 or 3 different sizes of a flexible brush tip, like a sign pen. And I'm going to use one of those here for the thicker lines. It's got a small and extra small sign pen. Then it's got a couple brush tip pens, and then the rest are just your regular fine liners. So extremely versatile. I tend to use the 0.3 size the most in any fine liner. And if you're not sure if you're going to like a brown one, you could definitely go to your local probably go right into Michael's and buy a brown Micron, and that would work out pretty well. But I like having that variety of sizes, especially if I'm going, not so much on something like this, but if I am doing a line and wash where I'm really going to get in there with a lot of cross hatching and a lot of detail with the pen, I like to have that variety. But I definitely use the 0.3 size more than anything else. And I do find the sizes on these pens run very similar to the sizes on Microns. Also, the Pitt Artist pens, they have a nice sepia set of pens. They used to be super cheap. You used to be able to get a 4-pack for like $4, but I think now they're more like $8. But you can get those at any online art supply store. They have they also have a black set and a sanguine set. Their sanguine set is actually quite lovely because it's more of that reddish brown that's a lot different. It's a lot lighter than the sepia. Sometimes the sepia pens are so close to black that it, like on the Pentel pocket brush pen, I find the sepia to be so similar to black that I kind of wonder, did I really need to have both of them, because they're so similar. But I do find these to be a little bit lighter, the Biannual a little bit lighter than the Pentel pocket brush pen, and I like that, but not everybody does. If you want a super dark brown, these might not be for you. So just kind of heads up. I prefer lighter brown because I want a little more difference between my black pens and my brown pens. So I love this set. I think it's a really great value. And this is that sign pen that I was talking about. And you can get from a fine line to a fairly broad line just by angling the brush or by pressing down a little bit more. This is very similar to the Tombow Funosuke pens. I always say that wrong. That's another great pen that I really enjoy that comes in a hard tip or soft tip. This, I would say, I don't know. I think this is probably a little bit more of a softer tip than the hard tip if you're comparing it to those pens and you're trying to get an equivalent. Maybe it's in the middle. I don't know. I guess it's yeah, I'd have to use them right side by side to tell. So yeah, I like it. I like the variety in this set. I think it's really nice. And I really like the refractions I can add to the glass with this wider, more expressive pen. I like an expressive pen where I can go from thick to thin. And again, if you want more info on painting glass, check out my watercolor glass class. I'll put a discount on it and give you a good deal. Just know I'm on vacation next week. So if you post some artwork and you don't hear right back from me, it's, I don't want anyone to worry that I didn't see their comment. Anyway, yeah. And I'm using an old cutting board. I got the idea from the Caran d'Ache palettes that they sell. I had this old cutting board that I wanted to replace. I'm like, wait a minute, let me take that to the art room. And it's got all kinds of scratches on it, so it's perfect for scribbling your pencils on if you want to make a palette for some more colors. And I also will start paint pens on it too sometimes so I don't get it on my work. And this paint pen is by Mr. Pen. I'm not sure if they still make them or not, but it's a nice wide opaque pen. You can also use a gel pen. Posca paint pens are great. There's actually a set on Amazon that gives you 3 white Posca pens and 3 white Uniball Signo gel pens. And those are pretty reliable pens too. I like those a lot. So yeah, whatever works. If you have any recommendations and you want to leave them in the comments below, please do. Always on the lookout for a good pen. One thing I'll tell you with the gel pens though is if you buy a multi-pack, don't open them all at once. Use one up, or when it stops working, then open the next one, because once you open them, once you start them, they have a shelf life. So you don't want to get them all started and then leave them sit for a while. So if I'm doing a workshop and I've got white pens and I'm having everybody use white gel pens, then I just send them home with the students, because there's no way, unless I've got another class coming right up, I'm going to use them up before they dry out on me. So just kind of a heads up there. I hate to see you spend money on things and then you think, okay, I've got a pen for this desk and that desk and this desk and that desk, and you open all your pens and then you realize that they're all dying at the same time, even though the ink's not used up. So I just want to make sure you know that. Oh, this little pen here is actually a Copic Acrea fine tip white paint pen. I'm not super sold on these pens, to be honest. They're expensive and I don't think the quality justifies the price, but this white one's working pretty good for me today, so I can't complain, I guess. And here I noticed there was an error with the threads on that bottle, so I decided to white it out with that pen and then redraw it. And there you can see the finished artwork. It was so much fun and I hope you enjoyed it. And if you'd like a real-time version of this class, please check it out in Critique Club. $7.50 per month gives you access to all the past tutorials as well. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time, happy crafting.